This moon is in the sign of Libra, and so emotional security is linked to harmony and partnership. It's a cycle where you can feel overwhelmed by circumstances, and that makes you particularly susceptible to the influence of others. So you need to carefully consider any emotionally based decisions. Now, you may be very giving during this period. You might offer your nurturing, your assistance to those in need, especially immediate family. However, you could also be very emotionally needy and demanding of others, particularly if you're still recovering from traumas of the past. And if that's the case, you might be withdrawn, moody, quiet, or suffering from depression as you review old wounds. But this is a cycle to get in touch with yourself, to address past conditioning. And you can do this by relying on your intuition, gaining a greater understanding of your feelings as you learn to protect yourself from potentially damaging situations. You're also going to review restrictive circumstances with the goal of gaining greater freedom and looking at whether the group needs compromise your own desire. Perhaps your needs conflict with society's expectations, or you're starting to look at whether your goals are actually your own, or if you're just living under the dictates or the indoctrination of someone else. And your assessment of individual freedom is part of a process of coming up with your own code of ethics, standards, or behavior that's in keeping with who you truly are, your authentic self, as you look for freedom from what you consider to be pointless restraint. Now, this can manifest through compromising situations that test your beliefs, issues of monogamy or loyalty. And that can bring us to intimate relationships with a focus on sexuality and money. And for some of you, it's going to be this really compelling magnetic connection that drives these issues to the forefront. Or alternatively, maybe you're looking at where you're being asked to maintain a relationship with professional superiors that may not be in your best interest, or where you're being asked to make uncomfortable concessions. So there can be struggles and power plays at the center of situations. And for some, this might lead to the ending or the termination of a partnership. And where money is concerned, maybe the expenses get out of hand, or you're dealing with unexpected bills that show up at the worst possible time. Even so, you may decide that you don't want to be openly aggressive. Maybe you won't even be assertive because you just want to avoid confrontation. And you might just choose to ignore offensive remarks or behavior, either because you're unprepared to respond, or when you consider it, you just don't feel that it merits any real value, that it doesn't really serve a purpose. On the other hand, if you're constantly suppressing your anger and emotions, eventually that sense of powerlessness is going to provoke some angry outbursts, and those may show up when it's not appropriate, given the time or the circumstance. Now, positively, maybe you get an increase in funds. This might come through a partner, someone more willing to share with you. Maybe it's a joint venture. Maybe it's something that comes from retirement or insurance or a settlement or some kind of legal action or royalties or a profit sharing fund or something like that. If it's not monetary, maybe you get a boost in clientele without actively looking for them, or maybe you're expanding your business or you're improving working conditions. This cycle is meant for trade and communication, and so you may find it easier to network and make professional connections. Again, money or gifts could come through unusual sources or unexpected events. The Mars in this moon chart is in a position to offer some assistance. And in some cases, that is in opposition to a sickness, danger, peril, and it may link you to a specialist or someone in medicine or skilled in surgery, especially if precision is important. So there's a good chance for success or prominence in areas of health, complementary healing, or dietary control. In any case, you're assessing your relationships and one-on-one encounters, and a significant relationship is going to have an issue that you need to address before the relationship can move forward. It may feel like those closest are making increasing demands of you to the point where you have to decide if the pressure of those demands is worth staying in the relationship. And the people that you're involved with, basic personality differences are going to come up. And if there's a refusal to love, to share, or to fully commit, that relationship could break. And your coworkers can also be more demanding if they view you as capable. So this is a period of coming to terms with agreements and commitment and what those mean to you. Now, there is a link between Venus and Uranus right now, and it indicates that new friends through unexpected circumstances will enter your life, people who come from a totally different background. And it could also mean a sudden romantic attachment to someone with the power to greatly affect your life. So there can be something out of the ordinary surrounding a romantic interest. In some cases, though, there's a need for you to change the way you look at others, especially people who are different from you, whether it's cultural, political, religious, or in social standing. And so situations will trigger awareness of difference and that need to adjust your thinking. So if you've strongly identified yourself with a particular belief, you will find that that view is challenged. And if you're not open to a new perspective, you will feel threatened by these encounters, but also forced to defend or explain your position. Now, if this comes down to a legal matter, certain situations may not turn out exactly as you'd like because of peculiarities in the legal system. That could mean technicalities or laws that seemingly don't make sense or that appear to be unfair. On the whole, relationships will experience poor communication, misunderstandings, and misrepresentation. So you can't rely on what people tell you right now. They may say one thing and then do something completely different. And some of you will be asked to make some sacrifices, and that may be beneficial to you, or you may find that it solely benefits the other person, the other party. So whatever the scenario is, it can be difficult to make concrete plans right now. And there's a lot of change taking place that could be reflected in your domestic environment. Maybe you find yourself in conflict with others about the home life or the family life you envision. Maybe you're on a different page than someone else. And you might be making changes in your living arrangements. Maybe you're renovating or you're moving. Or some of you will be involved with a family member or someone maybe close facing a life-threatening illness. And this situation causes you to reflect on your own life, your own mortality. Now, these issues correspond with the cards assigned to this moon, the Queen of Swords and the Three of Swords. Now, this is the warrior queen. She can make peace, but she knows how to fight. She fights for herself or on behalf of others. And she's distinctly aware of the darker aspects of life: hardship, pain, suffering, divorce, single parenthood, disappointment, heartbreak, grief. And so she may be working as an advocate for improvement. So she could be an attorney or a judge, and that Three of Swords could be a legal settlement. Or maybe, if health is the focus, she could be a doctor or a surgeon. And this queen signals that if health is a concern, that should be top priority. She might also be an intellectual or somebody very career-minded, a professor, a journalist, an advisor. Aside from that, you'll embody this queen's traits, either the light or the shadow. So in some instances, you're in a managerial position. You're inspiring other people to be their best, especially if you are very verbally skillful. Maybe you're using that in negotiations, or perhaps you are determining the character of others, people you're involved with closely, professionally. So this is a cycle where the focus is on efficiency, timing, organizing, planning, and staying on track with a timetable. And the effort you put forth will showcase your intellectual prowess, your abilities. And it's a period where you're going to want to clarify your interests, your stake in a situation, and your obligations. Now, if your intentions are to make war rather than peace, the Three of Swords can end as a breakdown in communication. And that might be because you push people too far. Maybe it's with your language or tyrannical behavior. And keep in mind that while you may be willing to make great sacrifice, you have to consider that others may not be so willing in situations where they don't have a lot in the game or they have little to gain. And for some of you, it may be that you're just taking on too much and then things get out of hand. You've overreached. There's more than you can handle, or some rash behavior has a consequence. And other people can see you as someone who has misrepresented self or intentions, or maybe there's someone in your circle operating at both ends, both helping and undermining you in some way. And that may not necessarily be a conscious intention. Now, this suggests, again, looking at alliances, the reasons you've come together. On a personal level, you have to consider whether you're just connecting based on a similar history of past disappointment, or if you're just motivated by the conquest, getting somebody to give you attention or affection just to see if you can. So you might be involved in situations where there's the interference of third parties or love triangles. If you're not careful, this can be a period that triggers the consequences of mishandling matters. However, one thing this queen does is give you more intuition. There's a keen awareness about how to avoid an oncoming disaster, possibly at the last moment. So you'll need to make decisions that could be motivated by grief, upsetting news, or outside forces. And if you already sensed this was on the horizon, maybe you're not happy about it, but you feel relief and a readiness to come up with a new course of action. However, if you've been blindsided by events that you didn't expect, it can be a real challenge to get past something that had or has a painful outcome.